Good morning, everybody. So here we are. We are in the last chapter, chapter 20. I can't believe we're already here. Wow, it seems like this semester flew by, especially given the circumstances we have. But let's just focus up. Let's finish strong, okay? And let's have a really awesome time doing some math. So here we go. 20.1. Maybe I should write that here. 20.1 is the parabola and the circle. Okay, now the two parabolas that you can see on the screen right now, we are extremely familiar with. We know, all right, and I'm going to get out a highlighter here. We know that the parabola will open up if that letter A is greater than 0. Okay, we know the vertex is h comma k. We know the line of symmetry, x equals h. Okay, now we know that it'll open down if A is less than 0. But still, we have h comma k is going to be the vertex, and x equals h is going to be the line of symmetry. So we're familiar with this type of parabola, okay? The second type of parabola that I'm going to introduce you to, all right, are going to be the kind of parabolas that open left or open right, all right? So notice here, parabolas that open left or right will have the form. Now, this is key, okay? Notice the equation is now solved for x, not y. Let me show you. Let's go back to the previous. Let's go back to the previous real fast. See how this one right here is solved for y? Well, if the parabola or the quadratic equation, if it's solved for y, then you're going to have a parabola that opens up or down. If you have a parabola that is solved for x, like we do here in part B, then you're going to have a parabola that opens left or right, okay? So how do we know which one's which? Well, it'll open up to the right, okay? It'll open up to the right if A is larger than 0, okay? And it'll open up to the left if A is less than 0, okay? Now, there's one more important piece of information here. In either case, I'm going to get out my last highlighter color. The axis of symmetry is now y equals k, okay? Because it's going to be a horizontal line, not a vertical line, okay? So what I think we should do here, all right, is let's just go in a traditional route and let's graph a couple equations here, okay? So the first one I'd like to look at is x equals 2y squared, okay? Now, with a situation like this, we have to be extremely careful, okay? Because this is pretty straightforward, all right? We could see that technically this equation is solved for x, all right? So we know we're going to have a parabola, all right, that is going to open to the right. Now, how do I know it's going to be to the right? Well, first off, and I'm going to get up my highlighter out here again. You have y squared, so we know it's going to be a parabola. And more importantly, that 2 is positive. So since the A here is, since 2 is greater than 0, it opens to the right. Okay? It opens to the right. Just like how we have up here. And this is the situation we have right here. Okay? So this is honestly, this one's pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. My suggestion is this. Here we go again. My suggestion would be this. Maybe select some x values. Okay, and select some y values. Okay. So you could do either or. You could select x's or you could select y's. Since I have y squared, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick some y values, okay? So, for example, here, let's pick -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2, okay? So, x equals 2. Let's put parentheses squared. So, when y equals -2, you get -2 squared, which is 4, and 4 times 2 is 8, okay? Then we have negative 1 squared. So negative 1 squared is going to be positive 1. And 2 times 1 is 2. Okay. 0. Well, that one's pretty simple. 0, 0. And then we get 2 and an 8 again. Okay. So you can go ahead and work those out. Now, if I were to graph this, let me put some marks here. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. 1, 2, negative 1, negative 2. Okay? So we have the point 8 comma negative 2. Well, that's going to be all the way down here. We have the point 2 comma negative 1. Well, that's going to be right here. We have the point 0, 0. Well, that's right there. Okay, let me darken these in a little bit more. All right. We have the point 2 comma 1. Well, that's going to be right here. And then we have the point 8 comma 2, which is going to be up here. So you can already see that this is a parabola that opens to the right. Okay. Now, I do want you to be aware of this. Okay. I do want you to be aware of this. So let's say you wanted to get your calculator out. Okay, so let me open up my calculator here real fast. All right, let me clear that. Now, I want you to look in the upper left-hand corner of my screen right here. Even if you're looking at your calculator, notice that button right there is y equals, okay? In other words, if you wanted to graph the problem that we just did with your TI-84 or 83 or whatever calculator you were using, you have to solve this equation for y. You have to solve, so let me write this here, to use the calculator, all right, you must solve x equals y squared for y, okay? Now, this is where everything that we've learned has to come into play, okay? Now, I'm going to make a mistake here, okay? So, I'm going to make the mistake. I'm writing this down. I'm going to make a mistake. All right? Because I want you to see just how important this is, okay? So, let's say, for example, you have x equals 2y squared, all right? And what you wanted to do is solve this for y. So what you would do is divide both sides by 2. That would give you x divided by 2 equals y squared. And then you applied your square root property. Now, if you forget to add this plus or minus, because remember, we have to add that, okay? So let's just say you forgot to do that. Watch what happens in our calculator. So if we were to only graph the square root of x divided by 2, okay? Watch what happens. Notice I only get the top of the parabola. I don't get the bottom side. Now, clearly we can see, we're supposed to get a top and a bottom, but we only get the bottom. Do you see why it is so important? Why it is so important to add the plus or minus. So now I'm going to erase the I'm going to make a mistake, because now I didn't make a mistake. I'm including the plus or minus. So if I wanted to graph this in my calculator, not only do I have to let y1 equal the positive square root of x divided by 2, but now I have to make y2 equal the negative square root of x divided by 2. Okay? Now watch what happens. There's the other side of my parabola. Okay? Now I'm also going to show you one more thing. Okay? And I'm pretty sure you've seen this before because I use it a lot. So I'm going to go back to Desmos. And Desmos is a beautiful thing. Because if you notice in Desmos, on the left-hand side, where I hope you could see it blinking, all right? On the left-hand side where we're going to input information, do you see y equals? You shouldn't, because it doesn't have it. Desmos is so smart that it doesn't care how you input the equation. Watch. X equals y. Oh, sorry. X equals 2y squared. And watch what happens. Desmos doesn't care. It knows exactly what you want. Okay? Also, do you remember that little chart remember the chart we just built? Let me show you the chart real fast. What I'm talking about is this right here. Watch in Desmos. If you click on the little gear icon, well, I'm supposed to get it. There it is. You see this? No, that's duplicate. What happened? They used to have, you know what? Maybe y equals, let me see if I can do it this way. I've never done this before. Will they give me a plus or minus in here? Miscellaneous. No, wow. Okay. So I think I learned something. I thought Desmos would give me it would give me the table that I wanted. Let's see if I do it this way. Yeah. So in blue, you can see that I graphed the top side of the parabola, okay? So the only way that Desmos is going to give you a table is if you let this equal y. Because when I click on that edit gear, or the edit list, the gear icon, do you see the difference between the red and the blue? I have this little table right here, convert to a table. So I can go ahead and get values if I wanted just by converting or by clicking on the table, okay? If you don't want that, then you could just get rid of it, all right? So I personally like Desmos because it doesn't require me to solve an equation for any variable. I just substitute it in, call it a day, all right? So let's do another example here. We'll do it both ways, all right? Let me go back to my black marker. So we'll do it both ways. Let's graph x equals -3 times y minus 1 squared plus 2. Okay? So once again, I'm going to create a table. And since this is solved for x, okay, I'm going to choose values for y. So I'm going to choose 1, 0, 2, 3, -2. Let's do -1. I think -2 might be weird. Okay? So for us, what we're going to do is let's substitute it in. So x equals -3. Let me put my parentheses there. So we get, excuse me, x equals -3 times 1 minus 1 squared plus 2. So that's going to be x equals -3 times 0 squared plus 2. Now I have to take 0 squared, which is 0. So x is going to equal, or I'm sorry, yeah, x equals 2. All right. So let's do the same thing. All right. Let's get rid of that. Then we're going to put a 0 now. So that's going to give me x equals -3. 0 minus 1 is -1 squared plus 2. Well, -1 squared is going to be +1. And -3 times +1 is still -3 plus 2. So x equals -1. All right. I'm going to do one more. I'll do one more here. Let's do 2. So x is going to equal -3 times 2 minus 1. Well, that's still 1 plus 2. Okay. 1 squared is 1. -3 times 1. X equals -3 plus 2. Or x equals -1. Okay. So for the remaining two, I'll let you solve them. But check me if I'm wrong. They should both be -10. Okay. And now what we're going to do is we're going to graph. All right. So let's go ahead. Let's graph. Now, if we notice, a equals -3. Okay. And -3 is definitely less than 0. So it opens left. So this is going to open to the left. And what we're going to do is plot our points. So let me draw out some numbers here. 1, 2, 3. But -1. Oh, I got to go pretty far. -2, -3, -4, it's supposed to be a 4. -5, -6, -7, -8, -9, and -10. 1, 2, 3. -1, -2, -3. Do you see why I always use a calculator or Desmos? This XY is they're gross. they're not nice. Maybe you're maybe you have some artistic ability. I don't. Therefore, I let the computer do all the work for me. I think the phrase is work smarter, not harder. So for me, using Desmos is much easier. All right, so we have 2, 1. All right, so I'll label that. That's our vertex. Now we have -1, 0. That's going to be right here. We have -1, +2. Well, that's going to be right there. Okay? Then we have -10, +3. So that's going to be all the way up there. And we have -10, -1. So that's going to be down there. And you can see here, see how good I am at this. There we go. We have our parabola that opens to the left. Once again, let's go back into Desmos real fast. All right. And if we wanted to, we can go ahead and we can type in every point. To type a point in Desmos, all you have to do is just put parenthesis, 2, 1, and parenthesis. And as you can see, the little black dot popped up. And if you wanted to, you can click on the label. It'll label it for you. So let's plot all these points. -1, 0. Label. Don't worry about the color of the point because once we graph it, it'll all change the same color, which is really nice. So then we have -1, what is it, 2? Perfect. Label it. Then we have -10, 3. All right, let's label it. And we'll move this over here a little bit. There we go. And then we have -10, -1. Label it. All right, so here's all of the points. And if I type in the equation that we have, x equals -3, parenthesis, y -1, and parenthesis, and I'll square that, plus 2. There's our parabola. Everything's labeled. Everything's perfect. Okay? So what I could do here for us, make it nice and pretty, is I will include this in on the notes. So we'll open up our snipping tool, click new, and I just highlight it. That's all. Come back into our notes, and I'll paste it right here. All right, it's kind of large. I'll shrink it down a little bit. There we go. Move it right about there. And as you can see, their parabola is a lot nicer than mine. But mine's not too bad. Mine's not too bad. Okay? So the next thing I want to talk about here, all right, the next thing I want to talk about are circles. Okay? So the graph of a circle, and here's the general form of a circle, okay? X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared is a circle with the center h comma k and radius r. Okay? Now, there is one special circle. There is one special. It's supposed to be a C in there. And that special circle is when the center is 0, 0 with radius equal to 1. We call that the unit circle, okay? And that has the form x squared plus y squared equals 1, okay? That's the very special one, okay? All right. So, in general, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared will look like this when you graph it, okay? So here's x, here's y. I'm going to just draw a circle, all right? Here's our center. That's h comma k. There's our radius r. And that is going to be any point on the circle x comma y. Okay? So in general, that's what it looks like when we graph it. Okay? So what we're going to do for now is we're going to graph x squared plus y squared equals 4. Now, this is very simple to do. First, if you recognize that our center h comma k equals 0 comma 0. Now, why does it equal that? Well, if I were to write this in standard form, it would be x minus 0 squared plus y minus 0 squared equals 4. Right there's h. Right there is k. Okay? So I know my center is 0 comma 0. And my radius, well, I'm going to erase this 4. I'm going to write 2 squared. So we have a circle centered at the radius. So there's my center. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out 2 units in each direction and draw a circle. And there's my radius equal to 2. Okay? Once again, I'm terrible at this because I am not really good at drawing those tick marks perfectly. So, of course, you know, I like to use Desmos. So if you come back into Desmos, I'm just going to click on New Graph right now. All right, I could type this in exactly the way it looks. So we get x squared plus y squared equals, and watch what happens when I hit 4. Bingo, it's perfect. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'll click on every single intercept. Okay, and I will snip it and then put this into our notes. There we go. And I'll put it to the right just so I can make fun of myself. There you go. All right. So that looks really nice. If you hear a weird noise in the background, it's my cat playing with a, I don't know, I guess he has the top of an iced tea container. Like a little lid, little cap. All right, let's try another one. All right, so how about this one? X plus 1 squared plus y squared equals 8. Okay, once again, what we're going to do here, all right, let's rewrite in standard form. Okay, so this is going to be x. Now watch what I do. Actually, let me write it in red. No, I'm going to write the important pieces in red. So this is going to be x minus, now here's the important part, -1 squared plus y minus 0 squared equals the square root of 8, the square root of 8 squared. Okay? Now, I know this is going to look confusing at first, so let me write this stuff out. Directly underneath, we know that the general form of a circle is, or the standard form of a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So what we have to do is we have to rewrite the first part as x minus a number. Well, when you have x plus, you can always switch that to minus a negative, okay? For the y version, or the y part, it's just y minus 0. Now, this last portion, all right? Let me tell you what I'm talking about here. I'll highlight it. This last portion right here. Okay? You have to remember that it is r squared, all right? Now, in order for us to get 8, we have to take the square root of 8 squared, because then the square root and the square end up reducing down to a 1, okay? So you got to be careful when you have something like this. See, in the previous example, this is really easy because it was 4. And we know that 2 squared is 4. However, in this example, this is a little bit more difficult because 8 is not a perfect square. So what you have to do is you got to adjust for that. So if this number right here is not a perfect square, okay, write the square root of that number squared, okay, whatever that number happens to be. All right? So now that we know that, let's go ahead and let's graph this, okay? So our center here is going to be -1, 0, and our radius is going to be the square root of 8, which we know reduces down into 2 square root of 2, okay? So here's my center, -1, 0. All right, now what I have to do is I have to go out 2 square root of 2 units. So here's what I know. Give me 1 second. Let me write this stuff out. I know that 2 times the square root of 2 is bigger than 2. I know that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out to the right, up, left, and down 2 units and a little bit more. I'm going to estimate this, okay? So if you see here, what I'm going to do is I'll highlight it in blue. So if I start at my center, there's 1, 2 units and a little bit more. Then I'm going to go up 1, 2 units and a little bit more. Then I'm going to go to the left. All right, 1, 2 units and a little bit more. And then down 1, 2 units and a little bit more. So now what you could do is you could estimate what this circle looks like. Oh boy, that is horrible. All right, so there's my circle. I know it is not nice whatsoever. So you know me, I work smarter, not harder. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and graph this. All right, make it look really nice and pretty. So let's see here. We get parenthesis, x plus 1. Raise that to the second power. Plus y squared equals, what is that, 8? And boom, there we go. Okay? So that looks so much nicer. All right? Let me label the center too. I did do that on the previous one, but I'll label the center here. Okay, so that's going to be -1, 0. All right, there's my center. Okay? So let's go ahead and let's pull this in. Let's make it look nice and pretty. There we go. I'll put it right next to my monstrosity. All right, and I will also just label the radius here. R equals 2 square root of 2. Okay? All right, so there we go. That looks pretty nice. All right? So that's the easy part. It's just, having the equation and then just graphing it. All right? So the next thing we're going to learn, all right, well, how do we find the center and the radius of a circle? Okay? All right, so I think the easiest part right here, let's just dive right into an example. So we have x squared plus y squared plus 4x minus 8y equals 16, okay? And our goal here is to find the center and the radius then graph. Okay? Now, it's easier said than done. So, how do we do this? Complete the square. I know, it comes up again. That's what we have to do. We have to complete this square. If you're not good at completing the square by now, you're going to be good because you got to do it all the time. Okay? So here's what we're going to do. Okay? Let me just stay with my red marker here. So, solution. Group the x's and the y's. All right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite it as such. X squared plus 4x, all right, plus y squared minus 8y equals 16, okay? So notice here, I have the x's and I have the y's grouped together, okay? Now, what I need to do is I need to complete the square for the x's, and I have to complete the square for the y values. So in other words, I have to complete the square twice, okay? Now, like I said, we know how to do this. Let's just take it one step at a time, okay? So what I'm going to do, once again, and I am literally writing every step here so you can see how it's done. With the next example, I'm not going to write every little step, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite again, all right? Except this time, watch what I do. Okay? So I wrote x squared plus 4x plus, and then I put a space, and then I wrote y squared minus 8y plus a space, okay? And I put them in parentheses. And here's what I know. I know that when I complete the square, I got to add a number right here, which means I have to add a number over here. And that's only for the x's. When I do this for the y's, I know I'm going to add a number here, which means I have to add a number there. So here you could clearly see what numbers I'm getting and where are they going. So let's complete the square for the x. So part 1, all right, take the b term divided by 2. Well, that's going to be a 2. Circle it. Part 2, we take that result and square it. So I know I'm going to add 4 to the left, which means I add 4 to the right. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I'll do this in a different color. So let's complete the square for the y values now. So part 1, all right, we're going to take the b coefficient divided by 2. That's going to be negative 4. We put a circle around it. Part 2, we take that result, negative 4, and we square it. So that's going to be 16. So what I'm going to do is add 16 to the left, which means I add 16 to the right. Okay? We all on the same page. So now, the next part is 2-factor. Okay? But we already know how each one of these factors, and what I mean by each one of these, we already know what the x squared plus 4x plus 4 factors down into. Because the answer, and I'm going to highlight it right here. I'll highlight it in green. It's staring you in the face. It's right there. Okay? So for the x values, I get the binomial x plus 2 squared. Okay? Now, for the y values, well, like once again, it's staring you in the face. That's highlighted in green. So for the y values, I get the binomial parenthesis y minus 4 squared equals, now all I have to do here is just add up 16 plus 4 plus 16, which is 36. Therefore, I have a circle where my center is, well, if you guessed negative 2 comma negative, or negative 2 comma 4, you would be correct. In radius, 6. because I can rewrite this as x minus negative 2 squared plus y minus 4 squared equals 6 squared. Okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm not even going to mess around with this. I'm going to go right to Desmos and just give us a really nice graph. All right, so we have a center. We know our center is going to be negative 2 comma 4. Okay. Oh, I put negative $2 Not good. There it is. All right, let's make this in black. Here we go. Label it. And now here's my circle. So we came up with parenthesis x plus 2 squared plus parenthesis y minus 4 squared equals 36. Okay? So let's go ahead, let's get rid of that. We'll shrink this down a little bit. There we go. And let's make a really good picture of this. There we go. And I'll put it directly below because it looks really nice. Okay? And what I'll do here, give me 1 second. Let's label the radius. You know what? Let's make it black. So, connect the dot right there. And we'll go right along this line right here. And if you, you could even check to make sure I'm correct. Look at the radius, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units. So I know I'm right. Okay? So that is how you find, let me go back all the way up here. That's how you find the center and the radius of a circle, all right, given an equation. So the last example I want to go over here is just writing equations of circles, okay? So it's not that difficult. So let's find this example here. Find an equation of the circle with a center negative 7 comma 3 and radius 10. Okay? So everything, if you haven't noticed so far, everything falls back to this. The standard form of a circle. Okay? Everything's going to fall back here. So here's what we know. We know the center is negative 7 comma 3, and that negative 7 is h, and the positive 3 is k. So, excuse me, I'm going to make direct substitutions. So I get x minus negative 7 squared plus y minus 3 squared equals 10 squared. And I'm just going to clean it up real fast. I see the two negatives back to back, so that's going to give me x plus 7 squared plus the quantity of y minus 3 squared equals 100. So it was direct substitution. And that's it. I think, personally, the hardest thing about this section was this example right here. Find the center of the radius of a circle, because I gave you just a very general equation here, and you had to complete the square. Okay? So just be careful with this. Use Desmos if you want to. It's your friend. All right? If you have any questions on how to use Desmos, once again, just email me. Let me know. If you want to, we can set up a Zoom appointment. All you got to do is ask. Okay? So I will talk to you in the next video. See ya.